We would like today to have a quick talk by Mr. Jon Medved, the CEO and founder of Our Crowd. Our Crowd is the world leading crowdfunding VC vehicle. We have a couple of guests here with us. So beside Jon is a veteran of the global VC industry. I know Jon for the last 25 years. When he started one of the first early stage seed VCs in Israel called Israel Seed, and invested in some of the most brilliant startups that came out of Israel. You have started Our Crowd 4 years back, just 4 years back, and now Our Crowd is the world leading crowdfunding investment vehicle. Before we would go to Jon's presentation, I would like to welcome some of our distinguished guests. We have Mr. Ron Citron, who heads business development for FBC, Israel's leading legal firm. We have Mr. Ron Yaniv, who heads the senior partner, who heads the tech practice for FBC. We have Mrs. Noha Brester here, who heads the Indian office of Video I2I and is part of the Indo-Israel Chamber of Commerce. We have Elias who is Director of Business Development for Asia for Our Crowd. Myself, my name is David Kenan. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Indo-Israel Chamber of Commerce. I live here for the last 13 years. I had the pleasure of being here since the very early days of the Indian IT world till today, where India is definitely one of the maybe three leading aspects of the global IT world, together with Israel and together with the US. And I think that the members that we have here today, which is Our Crowd, of course, which invests all over the world, maybe gets investment and have relationship all over the world, but definitely situated in Israel and in the US, and sooner rather than later here in India. FBC, our legal partners, which have been working in Israel and in the US, and sooner rather than later would have some kind of interest here. And us being assisting Indian and Israeli companies work together for the last 10 years, and of course with very strong ties in the US. Without further ado, I would like to invite Jon Medved. Jon, thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you all for coming. What I'm going to try to do, if I have a clicker, that's great. I'm going to run you through some slides, because you know there's the old joke. People ask, what platform does Israeli software run best on? And the answer is PowerPoint. So in any event, we'll give this a whirl. If you look at, can we make this slideshow, please? Bring it down to the slideshow. Go ahead. There you go. It's batteries. In the meantime, we'll do the manual. I'll come over here and push, or someone will sit over here. Maybe Elias, so maybe you can just do the old-fashioned. The rest of the world, over the last 4 to 6 quarters, has seen a retrenchment in venture capital dollars invested. I think it's a good thing. We got a little bit ahead of ourselves. Unicorn mania got a little bit out of control. People like Fidelity started cutting their valuations on companies from Square and others. And the numbers have not been good in terms of overall investment dollars. So if you look at the headlines, for example, you'll see, Asia slowdown continues for the 4th consecutive quarter, or U.S. funding dropped down 18% from last year. Unicorn birth rates low. Sort of negative headlines. And I understand, by the way, here in India, your numbers this year are estimated to be down again about 20%, going from $3.5 billion invested last year to about $2.8 billion invested this year. Now, by the way, they might be actually very good numbers, because my understanding of the $3.5 billion that you guys invested last year, $3 billion was allocated just to Ola and Flipkart. So maybe it means it's a broadening of the pie, which is actually very good news for the ecosystem. Next slide. But there's one ecosystem that seems to be confounding everybody and continues to grow this year, and that's Israel. And whereas the rest of the world is down somewhere between 20 and 30%, Israel is up yet again another 30% year on year, and it's just getting a little bit weird. And if you look at the next slide, you'll see how this actually represents itself in terms of dollars over the last couple of years, and it's getting bizarre. And if you look at these numbers, you'll see that this year will be over 5.5 billion. Again, just giving you the comparison, India 2.8 billion, Israel 5.5. And this is, again, venture capital investment in companies. Just to give you a sense of Silicon Valley is about 45 billion this year. So clearly Silicon Valley is still and always will be the big dog in the race. But the fact that Israel, and you know what our population is, right? I mean, there's a very famous story about interaction between a senior Israeli diplomat and a senior Indian diplomat who was being very kind and praising Israel, saying, you guys are doing so much work. How many people are you? And the Israeli at the time said we were 7 million. Today we're 8.5. And the Indian diplomat said, no, I didn't ask how many backpackers there are from Israel and India. I asked, what's your total population? And now, by the way, it's about the same. Right? In other words, when you realize how Israelis love India, and as I don't think you get an Israeli passport unless you agree to come to India at some point, whether you guys will take us or not. There's a huge correlation between that. But this is weird stuff, guys. That Israel, with its 8.5 billion people, has, 5.5 billion, could be 6. Well, the data will come in the next couple of weeks. That's weird. And especially when you look at how dramatic it went up in the last couple of years. It was 2.2 billion in 2013. Now, just to make you feel better about some other countries and where they stack up in this race for venture dollars, Australia, right, which is a very wealthy country, good technology, they invented Wi-Fi, among other things. Last year, about $150 million of investment in the entire country of Australia. You take Italy. Italy invested last year about 100 million euros. Okay, so both Israel and India are way, way off the charts relative to most countries of the world in terms of attracting venture capital dollars. By the way, something also very interesting to note, again, very similar in our two countries, is about 85% of our dollars invested come from overseas. This is not about rich Israeli funds putting money to work. This is about foreign funds finding the opportunities very compelling and coming to invest. And that's what I understood now from my discussions with the folks here at NASSCOM, is that's just like India. In other words, the Indian investment scene, if you guys are going to be lucky enough to get good venture capital money in your company, it's about 80 to 90% going to be overseas funds and not domestic funds. So next slide. This results in a very interesting picture in terms of companies that trade in New York on either NASDAQ or we have former president of Bangalore stock exchange, so we know a lot about stock exchanges. This is weird. Why is Israel number 4 in the world in New York? Okay, there are a lot of Jews in New York. Okay, I'll take that. Okay, but it's still a weird situation that, you get Canada, right? Canada's the neighbor, and a lot of mining companies are listed. You obviously get China, how, dramatic the growth has been, especially in listings. But the fact that Israel's number 4 is a little unusual. Next slide, please. But there's also something going on in Israel relative to M&A activity and multinational activity. So all of these guys are buying Israeli startups, and there's a lot of M&A. So last year, a little over 100, actually 104 M&A transactions out of Israel. Next slide. And it's resulting in about 325 or 350 multinational R&D centers in the country. Now, I just got data about India's number. India's number is about 1,050, according to NASSCOM. So you have 3 times as many multinationals. You have 800,000 people according to the NASSCOM gentleman I met, KS, who said that they represent 800,000 workers for the multinationals. And that, by the way, makes a very healthy ecosystem. Because if you have startups who now have the ability to either go public domestically or go public overseas or get bought by the multinational, that's a very, very good thing. And in Israel, the buyers are serial buyers. They're buying, not just one or two, they're buying lots of them. So Cisco has bought 13, or Microsoft just last year bought 5 different Israeli companies. Next slide. The biggest is Intel. And I think Intel was headquartered here in the, along the street a while. I think Dudu used to work for Intel. That's why I think I first met you. And Intel is so active in Israel today. The majority of their chip design worldwide is now done in Israel. Core IP for a lot of the processors that we use is developed there. And they also are building very advanced fabs. So a new 10 nanometer fab is active in the country. Next slide. A new part of the Israeli tech scene is the fact that the PE guys are now coming in. And it used to be that we were very good at little startups, but that was also the criticism. Little, okay? In other words, 50 million, 100 million, $200 million exits. Every now and then you'd see a big jumbo of $500 million, but not really unicorn status. That's changing. There are lots of Israeli companies now that are, I think I just got the number, about 20 are traded now on stock exchanges at more than $1 billion of value, and there are a whole bunch of M&As that are now in the $1 billion plus. Perhaps the most famous was Waze, which you guys, people feel that, by the way, they sold it too early and too cheap. They only sold it for $1 billion to Google, and it's very possible that it held on. They could have got more, but it's hard to turn down $1 billion, right? It's certainly you guys, I think, would tend to agree with me. Although maybe some of you have built a $10 billion company. Next slide. And then the biggest news in Israel is our opening to Asia. And this is why I'm here. And this is the most important part of our ecosystem right now, which is that we were always focused almost exclusively on the U.S., right? In other words, Silicon Valley, Israel, we now have non-stops and 100,000 Israelis living in Silicon Valley. Tremendous connections. New York with the stock exchange. Europe with trading. But Asia was maybe a place for backpackers and just wasn't a business destination. That's changed now dramatically. And it's not just lawyers and venture capitalists who are coming here, but most Israeli companies realize that their future, in one way or another, is increasingly connected to the Asian partners. China, as often is the case, is way ahead. This year, about $1.5 billion of Chinese money will be invested in Israel. And the joke is that there's so many Chinese investors coming with bags of money that they've got to open up a new red plus customs line. You have red for to declare, or green not to declare, but red plus will be just for the Chinese investors who will come in unbothered. But the reality is there's a lot of that. But it's starting to happen with India. Less with the investment, more with the trade ties. So companies like Infosys just bought Panaya. Did you guys represent somebody on that deal?
Silicon Valley back in their investment.
That's good. Okay, so this. Go ahead, please. We'll do this, consultative.
The first meeting between Panaya and Infosys was in 2007 when Crystal Balakrishnan came to Israel as our guest. And then he met Panaya, which was a 7-person company.
And he should have bought it then.
And coming out of the meeting, he looked at me and said, these guys are going to take me out of business in 5 to 10 years. So instead, he bought them out.
Yeah. Sorry. But in any event, I think that there is a huge potential for this kind of cooperation going forward. Because as I sit and meet startups, and that's what I do, I'm a deal junkie, I'd like to be pitched and like to give comments and whatnot. I'm hearing so many companies that are complementary to what we're doing in Israel. And it seems to me that you put these things together, and whether they're big companies like Panaya and Infosys or small companies, you can create better global footprints. Because the real challenge now is not how you're the big dog in Israel or how you're the big dog in India. It's how you're the big dog globally. And the challenge I want to, give to you guys is don't just think about the Indian market. The difference you have with us is you actually have a huge market, right? The largest country in the world in 5 years from now by population, that's a big market. And modernizing, and yes, you can make a lot of money by focusing on this market. But the real money, the big, huge, life-changing money is made by dominating the world, okay? And you can do it. You don't have to be just a clone or a local version of a Western idea here. You can come up with your own ideas, solving new problems, and make huge, headway as being completely innovative, not just the local version of this. And those are the kind of deals that I've seen, actually, several of them already in the last 36 hours since we've been here. Maybe not even. It's like 24 hours so far. And I'm sure that that's what's going to happen. So, next slide. These are just Chinese visitors to Israel. There's the numbers going up. Next slide. And this is an interesting story about Mr. Li Ka-shing. I don't know if you know this gentleman. He's reputed to be one of the wealthiest guys, along with Jack Ma and others in Greater China. And this is a map from his website about where he puts his startup money. And you can see he's got 27 startups, investments in U.S., 23 in Israel. Which, from his perspective, that he's got one in Indonesia, more here, that's for sure. Okay, but the reality is that many investors there look at the world in that sort of duopoly. Next slide. So, why is Israel so small in population and so big in startups? Why are we called the startup nation? What is the secret sauce or and by the way, it all goes back to culture. Okay, and I think I'm not a deep student of India, but I sense that there's a lot of affinity and a lot of things in common. We're both ancient peoples, right? In other words, 100 years doesn't mean much, okay, in our culture and in your culture. Hard work, family, tradition, a love for modernity, a love for changing things. All that's true, but there are other aspects that are really essential, I think, to the whole startup experience. And the first is an acceptance of risk. We were talking before about certain people from the northwest of India who had to deal with risk and tragedy. That somehow, in a weird way, steels you, not S-T-E-A-L, but S-T-E-E-L. It strengthens you like steel for dealing with challenge. If you are a person who's afraid of a risk, first of all, you're not sitting in this audience, right? Because you guys have all accepted the risk of starting up. You're just not going to build a company. But I got good news and bad news. First of all, you are all deluded. You're delusional, right? Don't take my word for it. Take a guy named Daniel Kahneman. He's a professor of economics who studies the psychology of a lot of economic things. And he's done a lot of work as an Israeli, won the Nobel Prize, among other things. And he's studied entrepreneurs. And he says entrepreneurs, by definition, are delusional. Now, not that you need to all see a shrink or, start taking drugs, God forbid. But the reality is that most startups will fail. The odds of your startups working are not good. I don't know if it's 1 in 10, 2 in 10. This is supposed to be an uplifting talk. I don't mean to depress you, okay? But the odds are you are going to fail. But what is the entrepreneur's response to that? So who gives a hoot or something worse? Okay? That's not my odds. That's his odds. Okay? I'm not going to fail. I'm going to make my own odds. And even if, God forbid, you fail, then the next time the two of you show up in my office, right, and you're the new guy, and you're the guy who's already had a failure, statistically, who should I pick? To pick the loser or pick the new fresh guy?
The loser.
Always pick the loser. Okay? Because that failure is going to make you stronger and a better candidate and statistically higher chances of succeeding. And what Kahneman also showed is that to the extent an ecosystem believes that they can beat the odds as a group, they change the odds. The odds actually change as a result of this mass delusion. And so in our little country, no one believes they're going to fail. They do, but we've changed the odds. You're changing the odds by sitting together. That's why these kinds of models are so successful. Because you sit and you're watching people around you doing it. You know, and it gives you not just inspiration, a sense of, we call it biyaha, togetherness, okay? But it's hugely important. We have other parts of the culture, and I won't spend too much time on this, but the immigrant nature of being an entrepreneur is very strong. I'm not sure, were all of you born in Bangalore? How many people were born in Bangalore? So the majority are migrants. Good, I prove it. So you're internal immigrants. Okay, and immigrants by definition are people who take risks. Okay, if you know what it's like to go to a foreign country or even as a different city, you have to start up. Basically, you're the CEO of mylife.com. Okay, you just do it again, and that's very again that's part of our tradition. I think you look at Silicon Valley and you see what the NRIs are doing over. I mean, my God, these guys are just killing it. Okay, killing it. And it's not just because they're smart and they're creative, but because they're immigrants and they're pulling themselves up, from with that perspective. The other thing which is good about both our culture and your culture is the international network. The fact that you have people all around the world who you can talk to, your cousin in Toronto or your brother-in-law in Austin or somebody in Mountain View, that is hugely effective. And we shamelessly use this. Okay, the Jewish network's a pretty good network. Not big, but very dispersed. And probably the Indian network is neck and neck. A lot more of you, and all over the world. And it's something you can use, okay, to drive your company forward. The other thing is that I don't know your culture enough to comment. I can tell you about our culture. We sort of attribute a higher value to what we're doing. It's not just about making money. Nothing wrong with making money. There's nothing Jewish about being poor. Okay? We don't worship poverty. We're not interested. In our holy texts, our holy men were rich. Okay? Which is funny. It's a little different than some cultures. You look at Christianity. Christianity, we're here at Christmas time, worships, certain poverty, humility, not the Jews. Okay, the Jews, our holy people were successful, the great fathers. So, but on the other hand, we believe that God made the world in 6 days, but on the seventh day he rested. But was the world done? Was it perfect, ready to go? No way. The notion in our tradition is that there's a lot of work to do to fix the world. The world is broken. Okay. It's not broken, it works, but there are elements that we have to take on ourselves to improve people's lives, to feed people, to solve pollution. And so many of our startups are what I would call social impact startups. They're not trying to build a nonprofit. They want to build profitable companies, but they're solving real problems in water or in agriculture or in inclusion for disabled people or healthcare. And so I think that, when you look, for example, in Silicon Valley, the way I look at it is a lot of people who are building companies are looking in this wall of mirrors that are all rich people, right? Like, I'm going to solve the problem people in Mountain View and Atherton and Palo Alto, and it's going to be great. But they're ignoring the problems, the real problems of 5 or 6 billion other people who need sanitation, who are still malnourished, many of them, who need access to education and banking, and these problems, solving them. And this is where you guys have a huge advantage because you're living in that part of the world which is going to have this enormous, transformation over the next couple of decades. You can make a fortune and do good. And so that notion that you have to choose between, being spiritual or humanitarian or altruistic, and being anxious to become wealthy, not just so you improve your life, but so you can donate money. That's the real, in other words, at a certain point, you stop making money for yourself and you're making money so you can give it away. Okay? There's nothing wrong with that. Those two things really, work together. So, next slide. Yeah, this is also interesting here. This is driving around Bangalore. I see all these wall murals from the Indian Defense Ministry, where they're proud, rightfully so, of all these great things which are designed here in the R&D centers. And that's like Israel. Israel, the army is not a negative thing. The army is a source of pride. It's a necessary source of pride. So if we didn't have it, we wouldn't exist, right? We would last for about a nanosecond without an army. My part of the world, just watch what's going on up the road from us. People are being slaughtered with no regard for human life, right? In other words, 500,000 people dead in Syria, 12 million refugees out of a population of 21 million. And it's not like some foreign, for us, it's a 2-hour drive, right? It's like just right up the road. And here we are with, our society focused on startups and technology and God knows what. People are slaughtering themselves. So the army is very important to us. And what happens is that the culture of the army drives a lot of our startup activity, believe it or not, because Israelis don't march well. If you ever looked at an Israeli graduation ceremony from officer training, they march terribly. Okay, we don't salute. We are the opposite of Sandhurst and sort of British spit and polish. And I've seen, by the way, spectacular marching among your guys. We don't do that. Okay, we argue. Trying to manage Israelis is like herding cats. Okay, they don't take orders. Stories told about a company that was bought, and there's a book called Startup Nation. If you want to read some more about Israel, I would urge you to get this book. It tells a story about a company called Fraud Sciences, which was bought by eBay in terms of preventing credit card fraud. And so the eBay executive who bought the company came to meet the engineers to tell them that their jobs are secure, that they're welcome to the eBay family, and then they're going to have a little drink. And he's making his, nice comments, and the guy raises his hand and says, "Can I ask you some questions?" He goes, "Sure." And he opens up the eBay annual report and starts to dissect it, okay, and to argue with this big executive in front of everybody, saying, "But you didn't make your gross margins, and what's with this guy?" And the guy was like, "Who are these people? Okay, I'm here. I just bought the company for $130 million, whatever." And he's arguing me with, and that's the sort of the Israeli way, is that a lot of questioning, and it comes from the army. Because the army, yes, you have to take orders ultimately, but it's about like project managers at Microsoft or Google. The second tier people really lead. The whole idea is to be what's in Hebrew it's called a Rosh Gadol. It's a big head. Not do your job, but ask big questions. And that's encouraged in our culture. And so the army has a very strong connection to what we're doing. Next slide. It's about relationships, right? About building ecosystem dependency. So as I mentioned before, most of this is Israel and the U.S., increasingly with other countries. And that's why I'm here, because I want to create more interdependency between Israel and India. I want to invest in your companies. I want to buy some. I want vice versa. I want to get investors here active. I think that only builds good sort of synergy between these two systems. So if you look at Massachusetts, for example, there are now 200 Israeli companies headquartered there because Israelis set up in Boston. They're generating, now the numbers are $18 billion in economic contribution to the state of Massachusetts. And Massachusetts is no slouch. Represents over 3% of the GDP. Okay? And so that you can create jobs together by working together. And I foresee that over the next decade or two, you're going to have a whole bunch of Israeli guys like me showing up here trying to put money in your startups, trying to put your startups together with ours. And I think we can create jobs and impact together. Next slide. And then New York, there's something going on. Similar, forget it. Next slide. Academic work is really cool. In other words, go next slide. Now, what's next? The stuff we're good at is the hard stuff. Is machine learning, artificial intelligence, drones, autonomous driving, medical devices, materials, semiconductors. And while in the last decade, perhaps the big money was not made in that stuff, right? Big money was made in Uber and in Airbnb and in WhatsApp. All wonderful companies with great technology, but that's not really what makes them unique. They just, they nailed a business proposition, a business model, and got to a market quick and dominated it and scaled beautifully. The next 10 or 20 years, we're back to the hard stuff, guys. In other words, the next wave of growth, yes, I know that in India, you guys are playing catch up and you still have lots of room to build e-commerce, build SaaS, and build that stuff. But the real world challenges are going to be who's going to figure out how to make drones work, okay, really work, and how to make sure they don't, collide with airplanes and with each other. How this autonomous driving dream, it's unreal, but everyone's focused on the car as opposed to how are we going to make them all play together, nicely, especially like take the city. You guys need autonomous driving really bad. By the way, my first investment in India is in a company called Zoomcar. Okay, and just next door. Yeah, and we're very, very proud of this company. This is they're doing very well, and we're delighted that Ford Motor Company just joined and whatnot. So I think that's going to be an interesting area. Next slide. So just a few words about our crowd, and then I'll tell you about some of our companies and be happy to answer your questions. So I've been in this game for about 35 years. I grew up in California, moved to Israel, and I fell in love with the place on a visit. And I built startups in fiber optic communications and software, in mobile software. I've been a venture capitalist. And as I was exiting my last company that I took public, a company called Fringo, which is a mobile software for video sharing, people asked me, I said, well, what are you going to do now? Are you going to go build another venture fund? I said, no, I think I want to find a way to both be an investor and an entrepreneur at the same time. So I looked at crowdfunding, which I think is a really interesting way of democratizing the whole area of investment. So I built our crowd, started, as a startup just like all of you guys, and we've been very successful, thank God. We've raised over $100 million for the platform, but we've invested about $320 million additional into over 100 companies. We now have 16,000 investors from all over the world, and we're growing very, very rapidly. Hope we're growing here. So next slide. We're the equity part of this equation. We're working with guys like, or competing, I guess, to a certain extent, with guys like AngelList or Funders Club in the Valley. Don't know enough about crowdfunding here to know who's playing in that world yet in India, but I'm sure there are. Next slide. The drive is this slide. This is a really important slide. I'm not sure you can see that, but it shows you two colors. It shows you orange is gold, we call it gold, and charcoal. And the gold is the money made in private investing, and the charcoal is the money made in the same company when it went public. So in the good old days, there was a lot of charcoal, right? If you bought into Microsoft at its public offering and held it to today, you literally made 600 times your money in the public market. If you did that for Oracle, you made 700 times your money. That's pretty wild. It means that you can literally take $10,000 and you can make 70 million. Kind of love that. Okay, that's a very cool kind of capability. The reality is that today you can't make that kind of money. You look at the new companies, charcoal's all gone. All of the value is made by the private investors. And the value today is even greater than it ever was as a private investor. So in Facebook, if you bought Facebook at the IPO, and I hope you did, you made 3 times your money, 4 times. Nothing wrong with that, but that's not the hundreds of times your money you could have made, with, Microsoft or others like that. So today, people want to get into the gold, right? You don't want to hear about Uber at 68 billion. You want to hear about Uber at 6 million, right? How do you get into a cool startup? And that's what equity crowdfunding is doing. It's essentially letting the mass of people, at least initially for us, it's accredited investors, rich people, get into startups on a broader scale. So next slide. So we're a hybrid of venture capital and crowdfunding. We look at thousands of companies every year. We'll select about 2% of them. We then diligence sign term sheets, just like a VC. We put them up on the site. We put our own money in, and then we open the deal with the same terms as the crowd. So you get to invest with us on the same dollar per share or whatever the price is that we've negotiated with you guys, the entrepreneurs. You got the next slide. And so we have a very robust portfolio, about 100 companies. 70 of them are from Israel, 30 outside of Israel. By the end of next year, our investment rate will be about 50% global and 50% in Israel. So we're building a really broad portfolio that runs the gamut from medtech to fintech to green technology, consumer to you name it. If it has some kind of technology, we're doing it. Next slide. We were named one of the top 100, actually top 10 fintech innovators by KPMG. Next slide. We invest with leading angels, people like Eric Schmidt and Mark Cuban and Mark Benioff. Next slide. Lots of venture investments. We've got 5 different investments we share with Vinod Khosla and Khosla Ventures. We do deals with Excel, with Andreessen Horowitz, doing our second deal with Sequoia right now. Next slide. And we have exits. Okay, so it's not about just like putting money to work, but it's about making money. We've had 9 exits so far, 3 public listings and 6 M&A transactions. Next slide. So without getting too much of this, the big difference, go to the next slide, is the next slide. We give people a choice on the platform, and I urge you to go to the platform either on your mobile phone or your desktop. We have some literature here. You can sign up. We give people the ability to choose individual investments like an a la carte menu in a restaurant, picking a cherry. You can build a portfolio, which allows you to take 50,000 and do 10 deals, or you can actually go into a fund. And we actually have venture funds that are accessible. You don't have to write millions of dollars of check. You still have to write a $50,000 check, which is not for everybody, obviously. Next slide. In terms of our different kinds of funds, we have funds in sectors. We have an index fund. We have a seed fund. We now have our first geographic fund in Australia. We'll get, hopefully put India on that list, not in the too distant future. Next slide. We are very careful about curating our deals. We look at hundreds of deals. We check them out just like the VCs do, maybe more intensely. Next slide. We aggregate everybody together. So when people invest in our crowd, you'll get your company, right? We choose to invest by you. There'll be hundreds, maybe even thousands of people from around the world who will choose your company, but we'll take them all and aggregate them and write you one check. So you don't have to deal with 1,000 people. Look, dealing with growing a company is hard enough. Dealing with a bunch of little investors, it's a nightmare. Trust me, I do it all the time. Okay, and I've got nice investors. I love my investors, but I used to be a CEO of public companies. You get these weird letters where there are like 4 pages of tough questions, and you always look and you see, yes, I own 10 shares of your company, for a total of $300. Those are the guys who give you the trouble. So you do not want, hundreds of small investors on your case. That is not good. Okay, but if you can have hundreds of these actually rather well-connected investors represented by one entity, writing you a single check, sitting on your board, getting the same rights as the big boys in terms of preemptives and anti-dilution and all that stuff. That's the way that we work. Next slide. So one of the things that will show you what's changing about this market is that we launched an agriculture funding vehicle together with 2 very small companies. One is called Bayer, which just bought Monsanto, and the other is called DuPont, that just bought Dow. they're very, very big. And you ask yourself, wait a minute, the biggest chemical companies in the world are now dealing with crowdfunding? That's weird. But that's what's happening, is because innovation is so important. These big companies realize that they have to get in the game, and they got to work with venture capital funds, and they got to work with crowdfunding, at least the best platforms. Next slide. We, help our companies in terms of post-investment. We don't manage it. We sit on boards and provide a bunch of mentors. Next slide. We do big checks. So our average check size now is about $2 to $3 million, but our biggest has been $15 million. Next slide. We do follow-on investing. We're not about investing once and then, forgetting about you. We keep on coming back in subsequent rounds. So we invest in your multiple rounds as you grow. And we focus on different stages. So we will come into your company either as seed or Series A, but we also do B, C, D, E, and even F. Okay, so we will, write checks up and down the stages of gestation of companies. Next slide. We are, again, diversified according to sector as well as now geography, increasingly. Next slide. And we're, as I mentioned before, quite diversified in terms of where we're putting our money to work in the stages of the company. Next slide. We're working with big corporations, not just Bayer and DuPont, but also General Electric, Shell, Honda. We're working with a whole array of big corporations who want to use us to get closer to you. And we're very interested in facilitating that. It's about a combination of offline and online, even though I would love to make this all online, right? In other words, from an offline, it's cost money. You got to schlep here, you got to go to the hotel, it's time, okay? But there's no way around it. You can't make investments online. Right? I can't, no matter how much you send me your stuff, if I don't look you in the eye, I am not writing a check. But that's also true of my investors. And I got 16,000 of them. They, at some point, most of the guys who are serious, they want to meet us. They want to sit and hear a talk, meet some of our companies. Then they'll use the tools, okay, of the website, that ability to do online and offline. And by the way, I think in general, there are a lot of really interesting businesses that are going to be focused on that. I'm sorry, that's mine, so no one should feel embarrassed. Other than, if you could figure out a way to turn this off. I know they won't stop. They'll keep on coming. That interplay between the real world and the virtual world, I think, is very interesting. You saw the examples with Pokemon Go, okay? And there's going to be hundreds of different business models which will be combining these two. We certainly do that. Next slide. And we want to invite you in February to come to our summit. We have an annual summit this year. We're expecting about 5,000 people in Jerusalem. If you get there, it's free. Okay, I mean, you got to cover your own hotel. We'll feed you and give you content and whatnot. You can't put up all 5,000 people. Not yet. Okay. And the hotel rooms are we have good rates on the hotels. Next slide. And some of our companies, and I'll just give you a sense of some of the new things that we're working on. Zebra Medical is the world's leading machine learning platform for automatic diagnosis of medical imaging. So think CT, MRI, X-ray, where the diagnosis is being essentially done by machine. And you can use this as a radiologist to get better results. We're finding all kinds of new ways to detect cancer in the breast and arteriosclerosis for heart disease, as well as osteoporosis. And it's a wild company. We're invested with Vinod and with Mark Benioff and a bunch of others. It's an amazing company. Next slide. BriefCamp does video synopsis. It basically turns video into searchable data so that a day's video action can be compressed into a minute, tags everything so that you can search it. Say, find me the guy who was suspicious with the black cap and the black backpack, and that's how we found the Boston bomber. Believe it or not, this company did that in a matter of hours for the FBI. Next slide. BioCache does what's called behavioral biometrics. They study how you type, how you use the mouse, and how you touch. And they know each and every one of you and each and every person in the world independently, would you believe? No more passwords, no more two-tiered. All you have to do is start computing and we know who you are. And it sounds like, come on, Go check it out. Next slide. Wave is a very fast-growing Canadian accounting company. They do small business accounting. It's growing like leaps and bounds. We're very proud of this company. Wonderful. Next slide. Nanorep does chatbots for customer service. I mean, a lot of your countrymen are going to lose their jobs in Chennai, okay? And that's just part of reality, right? In other words, if you can get the information from a computer more efficiently, quicker, and cheaper, no stopping it. Okay, no legislation is going to prevent it. And you guys should be the ones leading this revolution, right? Rather than just being the object of it. This is an Israeli company doing great work in this area. The third is air conditioning. Think, what the hell is a high-tech company doing with air conditioning? Well, it turns out that air conditioning is the biggest user of electricity in the grid. If you have a big building, what you look at with your cost structure is what air conditioning is costing you. And this uses space station technology where they don't have air, but they filter what they do have very well to reduce the number of times that you need to cycle air in and out of a building, because the air outside is not healthy. You want to keep that air out, okay? It's not good quality, and you just want to filter what you've got and make it better and better, and you save energy. And this is now deployed at Google, Apple, Citibank, Tesla, and a bunch of other companies, and will be coming to India to clean up your air in your building, give you better breathing and lower energy costs. Next slide. Empress is one of the more famous companies in Israel because it's the software that powers the Iron Dome, which is Israel's anti-missile system, which is pretty miraculous. We shoot stuff out of the sky, which no one really thought could. But one of the things was just a little story. In Israel, our defense minister is usually the most respected position in the country. One of our prime ministers had to make a deal with a labor leader and appointed him defense minister. And everybody in the country freaked out. They said, "You're messing with our security. This guy is, he was a longshoreman. He hadn't been a military, leader. And then he went up to the Golan Heights to look at the troops at an exercise. And there's a very famous picture of him taking binoculars and looking at them the wrong way with the caps on. Okay, so he became sort of a laughing stock. Well, wait till the end of the story. This labor leader named Amir Peretz was brought this challenge from some guys in the armament development groups who said, "We think we can actually shoot missiles down." And all the really wise people said, "No freaking way, okay? You can't shoot short-range missiles down in time. It's simply a computing problem which is not handleable." And these guys who came said, "No, I think we can do it in about 2 to 3 years. Give us the money and we'll show you." And this longshoreman, labor leader, said, "You got it." And he was right, and that system worked. It literally was installed the week before the war opened up, and it saved countless lives, changed Israel's defense position forever, and it was done by this labor leader. So anyway, the company who did the software, which is a big part of it, is a company we just invested in with General Electric. And what makes this software so compelling is you can now use it for industrial IoT on huge scale. So think of the electrical grid, think of smart cities, think of smart transportation networks. We've got tons of variables, real time, totally mission critical. That's what this company does. Next slide. Taranis is using satellite imagery, drone collected imagery, smartphone, and big data control to get you better yields for your plants. Boring stuff like making 20% more soybeans. What it does for a farmer, though, is it changes their lives. And pretty exciting stuff, actually. Next slide. Surgical theater uses virtual reality to give brain surgeons a look inside your brain before, during, and after an operation. So these are guys who come out of Israeli flight simulation units, who built flight simulators for the F-16s, and they teamed up with brain surgeons to take you on a truly fantastic Next slide. Elmida does concussion identification and actually remediation. It's going to be a very interesting company. Next slide. And BT9 is the intelligent supply chain. That's enough. I mean, we can go on, with 100 companies, you can go on. I just wanted to give you a taste of what some of our companies are doing. Maybe one more. That's kind of rewalk up there. Elias? No, next. No. Which one? Go next one. Next. There. That's my favorite. This is a company we took public. It's a guy who was a normal engineer like all of you, except he was very lucky in that he sold his first company to Medtronic. He was celebrating with his family driving ATVs, and he had an accident. And he flipped the ATV, and he became a quadriplegic. Now, most people, you become quadriplegic, life's over, right? Just survive and count the days. Not this guy. He said, I'm going to walk again. And he invented robotic legs or an exoskeleton that allows paraplegics to get up out of their chair. Now, that was his first company, Rewalk, which we took public. We've invested twice. We're very happy. We're very proud of this company. The guy's back again. He's a serial entrepreneur. And now he's got a new company called Up and Ride that's for quadriplegics. And it turns your wheelchair into like a Segway. It's like the coolest thing you've ever seen. And he's an amazing guy. So it's all about you guys. It's about the entrepreneurs. People like me who put money into this stuff. I'm an entrepreneur too, but the guys who are your investors, we claim credit for what you do. We make money on what you do. It's all about you, okay? What you want to do is find good investors who share your passion, your dreams, who will help you, who won't get in your way, okay? And do me a favor. Do diligence on your investors the way they do it on you, okay? Most startup guys are so delighted when someone comes along with a check, oh boy, that you never ask a question of who have you funded? Can I have some names of people you work with so I can call them? Now, some people might be unbelievably insulted and walk away from you at that point. Good riddance. You don't need them, okay? But this choice of who is going to be your investor is really critical. In fact, you're not going to make in your business life. It's not quite being married because, we only work together for 5 or 10 years generally, but it's really important. And so please take it seriously. Good luck to you all, and I look forward to hearing from some of you all. I'll be happy to give you business cards, and I'll be happy to answer some of your questions for a few seconds.
Can I get the second mic?
So my mic is coming up. It's so inspiring to hear you, first of all. As an entrepreneur, you really reaffirmed the belief that entrepreneurs can change the odds in their favor. What we are doing is building a social network of proximity and the social network, which is right in the middle of LinkedIn and Tinder. One of the challenges that we are facing while talking about investors in India is that the appetite to invest in consumer products is low. There's a good appetite to invest in business models where there's a clear monetization opportunities like e-commerce or B2B, but consumer products, the gestation periods are long, and the monetization only starts flowing in after you have a sizable user base. Now, do you have any company in your portfolio where you have invested in a pure play consumer product where the monetization will typically happen 2 years down the line?
Yeah, I'll show you. Go back 3 slides. No, one more. Go back forward. Yep, there you are. And this, by the way, is an example of where we invested, and it's also a good point. Do any of you guys know this product? It's going to change the world, I think. I hope. It's the company's called Consumer Physics. The product's called SIO. And what they've done is they've taken anyone here study physics in college. Must be an IIT physics graduate. Come on. No, you're all computer science. Okay, so if you're a physics guy or a chemist, you probably use what's called a spectrometer, right? Which uses optics to really get to the heart of what's going on in those molecules. And today, spectrometers are used all over industry, billions of dollars, but they cost like $50,000 and they're a big piece of lab equipment. These guys came to us with this completely wild-ass idea. And they said, we can make it so small that you can put it into a little key fob. And I remember taking this to a bunch of experts, right, to give me a due diligence read. And I took about 9 people. I think 6 of them said, run as fast as you can away from this deal. This guy is a maniac. It's never going to work. 3 of them, my minority report guys, said, I don't know if he's going to pull it off, but it's really interesting and he has a shot. And I said, that's all I need to hear, because if they actually pull it off, it's going to make a ton of money. And you know what? Life is short. So we invested. We were followed here also by Vinod Khosla, who came in after us. We sort of like similar kinds of deals. And this thing works. It really works. And they're going to demonstrate in just a couple of weeks at CES, at the Consumer Electronics Show, it working inside of the phone. Okay? And basically, you can take this device and it'll tell you how many calories are in your shake. It'll tell you, is it a real or a fake Viagra? Okay, or more importantly, antibiotic, because there's like a ton of those fakes running around. It will tell you, which watermelon's going to ripen, sooner. It's like magic. It's like Google for matter. Now, we put the first money in, seed money here before Vinod, and then they raised money from Vinod. But then when they were ready to go, they actually launched a Kickstarter campaign. And Kickstarter is what's called a reward-based crowdfunding platform, especially for gadgets or consumer electronics products. And they put up this really great video, and within 45 days, they raised $3 million on Kickstarter. So if I was today building, and then by the way, we invested more. We put in like $5 million. So far the valuation keeps on going up. So far so good. Let's hope it turns into something huge. But today, if you've got a great idea, don't go to people like me. Go to Kickstarter. Okay, and you can do it from India, right? You can create some kind of cool consumer product. Just, you don't have to actually have it ready, right? Just put together the video. Hire this guy, okay? He needs more work, and we all need more work, And bottom line is that people will, if it's a really good idea and you work the campaign right, you can literally raise millions of dollars. Yeah.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Hi, John. First of all, welcome to India. Right. My name is Rishabh. So I have 2 questions for you. First of all, as an entrepreneur, what main challenges did you face while starting up a crowd, right? In the context of if someone is starting a crowdfunding platform, what advice would you have for him, right? The second question is, in the rewards and the donation crowdfunding space, do you think there is scope of total disruption by truly free crowdfunding? For example, if I develop a platform, I don't charge any commission for it, and I earn money by selling ad space or selling marketing solutions. And these are my 2 questions.
Okay, so
Thank you.
I just think ad-driven models are tapering off. In general, ad tech is not popular enough. No one cares that you're charging a commission on it. In other words, you as the consumer are putting $50 or $10 or $100 into a project. You don't care whether they're taking 5% or 9%. You don't feel it. So there's no real consumer friction as a result of the reward-based business model. So I think you have nothing. It's a cool differentiator. It will sound good. Might get a good article in TechCrunch. Okay, but whether or not that will be a significant business, how you live with doing without all that revenue, right? In other words, if Kickstarter does now $1 billion a year, they make 50 million or 90 million in they don't do quite $1 billion a year yet, but they're doing very well, thank God, and it's a real business model. Do you know how much ads you need to do to get 50 million a year? It's a lot. I don't think you can do it. In the space. Look, the central challenge. There are several challenges. The first challenge is team. Okay, in other words, when you are building and this is true for crowdfunding or true for anything else, you got so many cycles, and you're trying to figure out: am I raising money? Am I working on the product? Am I finding customers? Am I recruiting people? Recruit people. And you may say, I don't have any money. Doesn't matter, right? Why are you working? You're working for the dream. You're not paying yourself big salaries yet. And if you can't recruit people, good people, early on, then you have to ask yourself a question about what you're doing. So I find that that's one of the big mistakes that first-time entrepreneurs make, is they don't spend enough time thinking about how do I recruit people to work with me and even get them to join. And sometimes they join not full-time, part-time, they'll moonlight for you, they'll be an advisor, but really make, in my opinion, that is the easiest and the cheapest way for you to add value. Because those people will lead you to a quicker, better product, to more customers, and ultimately to money. Other questions?
Please. So I'm from my company is in cybersecurity. So looking at your portfolio, it looks like it's more like deep tech, and sort of few companies are pretty wacky. So what made you decide that these are the kind of company which you would like to invest? Because the challenge we are facing is obviously, when you have a deep tech and there is no proper business or the case related to that, a lot of companies, like as a startup, investors are looking for tractions. It's not the idea which is matters, it's like what traction do you have. So like these kind of things, I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Look, cybersecurity is perhaps the best long-term bet for you to be involved with any of these businesses. I mean, I can't tell you which business is going to win or lose in terms of who's going up and down. I'll just tell you that cybersecurity is here to stay. Because the bad guys, I'm sure some of your good friends, okay, are basically so hard at work that no matter how much you do, they're always improving. So this is evergreen. And at least in our country, cybersecurity is ultra hot. We have about 400 startups now who are active in cybersecurity out of, they estimate, about 1,800 around the world. And I don't think there are enough cybersecurity startups in India. You've got a huge software infrastructure, right? $34 billion in activity. So, you don't have to go too far to find people who have real needs today, okay, to protect their data. And, I would stay the course. And I think that, look, a lot of people like the new, bright and shiny. So, the venture guys are by and large, we are all part of that group, herd people. You want to find the leaders of the herd, not the back of the herd. Back of the herd is really stinky, okay? You want to be up in front. And I think that there should be investors here interested in cybersecurity. Talk to me. So we had a very good team. We'd like to hear about it.
Okay, one last question.
Well, two. There were
Two. Sorry, ladies. So
yeah.
Please. You're the next. Sorry.
I have now. There are. This is according to me that you have an innovator, executor, integrator, and facilitator where your entire idea of the product goes out to the market. And now, of course, I knew there's an investor who is, having a better view to what you are doing, and then from one platform you can kickstart or jump to a higher level. Having failed in my previous venture.
Good for you.
So I'm now looking at all these 5 aspects as well as an investor and trying to merge it down to a level where failing is not really a problem. But then how do I now sail across all these stuff and come to a level where I want to play it global?
Okay, so first of all, there's only so much you can do in this process with analytics and science and discipline. I still feel there's a lot of art to study here. This is magic. And a lot of it, maybe it's because of the size of my stomach, I think a lot of it is a gut, okay? And at a certain point, whether it's your business model or your partner or your investor, it will feel right? In other words, you'll play with the idea. I remember I had this idea about our crowd, and I was at Harvard for a seminar, and I was speaking, and I had a friend in Boston who I valued very much, one of the early guys at Akamai, and I wanted to meet with him, and I said, I could use somebody to bounce this idea off of, that I'm thinking about. And I sat with him for an hour and a half, and we just tore my idea apart and reconstructed it. And at that moment, when I was done with that, meeting, I knew what I was going to do. It just changed everything in an hour and a half. So we say in our tradition, something in Hebrew, aseh lecha rav, means make yourself a rabbi, make yourself a guru, find a good friend, okay? Make them you don't have to be, your partner, but someone who can listen, who understands, mentor, and who you can, share these ideas with. And believe me, at a certain point, you'll either say, no, this is not the idea, I'm going to go get another one, or it'll come together, and when it's right, look, we still have doubts, right? You'll still wonder late at night whether what am I doing? I need a job, and how am I going to pay for my family, or all these things that go through. My first startup, I remember we had to mortgage my mother's house to keep the startup alive. My mother, was retired, and I had to go to my mom and say, Mom, I got to take a mortgage out on your house to keep this company alive. And luckily, paid it off and made money. But you do crazy stuff to be an entrepreneur. But at a certain point, it's just gonna make sense to you. Yes, analyze it, put it on paper, try to figure it out, find somebody who can bounce off the ideas. Yes.
Yeah, just wanted to know, in your portfolio of companies, what would be the share of women-led businesses?
Not enough. Okay, it is a worldwide, horrific outrage. How few women entrepreneurs and CEOs there are. And I don't think it's the women's problem as much as it's, I think, the men's problem or society's problem. But it's a real problem. And it's very, very sticky. And it's not just in my country, it's in Silicon Valley, and I bet you it's here. It's certainly in China. The numbers are less, the numbers, less than 10%. Okay, it's horrific. Now, part of it is your problem, okay, as women. Because the way that women are brought up, I have a very talented daughter. I have 3 sons and a daughter. My baby is my daughter. She is brilliant. She was really good at science. She participated in all these little programs to make cool companies and ideas. And I said, I'm going to have this poster girl of entrepreneurship who's going to be this huge. She's going to go get her PhD. And then finally she graduated high school. And I said, okay, what are you going to study? She goes, psychology. And I said, what? You can't do that. Computer science, physics, something, biology. Law. No, I've already got one lawyer. It's more than enough. And she just, it's very funny. She studied psychology. She's a singer. And she married. They had a kid. And she and her husband started doing viral videos on Facebook. She's now got 50 million views. So she came all the way around back to technology, where she's essentially running the family business now, is singing videos. You can go see her. Her name is Yonina, Yonina. And it's wild. So, but the point I'm making is that there's a lot to be done in this area. And if you know of good women entrepreneurs or yourselves, send us the stuff. We'll take a look at it. Still got to make the grade. We take 2 out of 100. So, but we're very disposed to trying to make some solutions. We have about our 10%. That's our number. It's not enough.
I would like to take this last question as to double the challenge. The first challenge that you came to India is to open our Crowd India. The next challenge is one of the first investment in India should be led by a woman entrepreneur.
Amen to that. Thank you very much, guys.
I would like to thank you all. Thank you.